Since Apex Legends Season 10 came out, we have seen a wild number of new players come to play Apex for the first time from other games like Warzone. It is no secret, a lot of the big guns on Twitch have been hopping on board lately, and I for one can already tell an influx number of people looking for beginner tips to get into Apex. So today we are doing just that, giving those players and really just any new player or someone looking for a refresher some beginner tips to help you really get your mind reworked around what is really important in Apex Legends. Just so you have a small amount of info about me and my experience, I've played Apex Legends since the game came out, and I've covered virtually everything the game has to offer on this channel. But what some may not know is that I have played a ton of Warzone. I have played every Call of Duty since 2005. I have grinded the hell out of Fortnite, and honestly, I've played pretty much every major first-person AAA shooter in the last 15 to 20 years, from titles like Halo, Battlefield, Destiny, just to name a few. Basically, I'm just trying to say I have a pretty good baseline for a lot of the other games and how they do play. First up, we are going to have stats on weapons matter significantly less than other games. Most guns have no damage fall off range, which really gives them a lot more usability depending on the player's ability to control that recoil. In addition to this, attachments compared to Warzone are way more simplified. There really are no hidden benefits from the majority of attachments like there are in games like Warzone. Thirdly, nearly every gun can be usable, and every player needs to know how to use every gun. Since you aren't getting loadouts, you sometimes will be forced into uncomfortable conditions, such as non-metal loadouts. While something like the R99 has one of the fastest time to kills out there, it isn't necessarily the best due to its general lack of range compared to something like a Flatline or an R301, and you'll need to be picking up the right weaponry based off how you and the squad is playing. Also, something to consider is even what mode you are playing, as something like Ranked Apex really requires a much more mid-range friendly type of weaponry. Apex just isn't much of an analytic game like Warzone is. We can't really specify what is the best weapon, what is the best loadout. There isn't really any crazy broken guns out there like the Bruin or the MP5 was if you are coming from Warzone. In terms of the weaponry meta, stuff doesn't really get changed as much as like it does in Call of Duty, so do not overthink your loadouts and try to be efficient with every weapon in the game. So we already mentioned it in the first tip, but let's now talk about the time to kill. For the most part, since Apex Legends has a fairly high time to kill compared to other games, it will reward highly skilled players a lot more than underskilled players. This means Apex Legends might have a higher skill gap compared to some of the other games because there's a fair amount more to consider when going into a gunfight. This also means that team play is just way more important, which we will get to in a second. But one of my favorite things about Apex Legends is the high time to kill. In general, this means I do not need to be worried about someone hiding in a building and killing me as I walk in and literally getting knocked out of nowhere. You will notice though that any really good player is going to be much harder to go up against in Apex Legends because there really isn't any wiggle room. And in some ways, this can make Apex feel a little bit sweaty. My biggest suggestion though is to not rush engagements and do not overextend in a 1-on-2 or 1-on-3 because good team play will always be rewarded. In Apex Legends, it is much harder to take on entire teams because, frankly, you do not have 60-round magazine weapons that can potentially knock 2 or more players with a single mag, and you don't have a backup 30 to 45-round weapon that can make pretty quick work of enemies that are up close. So, of course, that brings us to team play. For the most part, Apex Legends has a huge emphasis on team play. Queuing solo into mid or high tier ranked will always be brutally difficult, and even playing pubs on your own can be tough, especially since there is no solo mode. My biggest suggestion for the solo warriors out there is to really make full use of probably what is one of the best pinging systems in gaming. Beyond this, stick fairly close to your team and be sure to play off of each other's abilities. If you can coordinate team shooting, it will hugely reward you. Try to watch your teammates' movements and locations like a hawk and do your best to stick within gun range of them if you are going into hot zones. The next advice I can give is to capitalize on moments. I talk about this a lot. Getting enemies down isn't always easy, and if you aren't making quick work of a 2-on-3 since you already got one knocked, you are just absolutely wasting an opportunity, and these do not always come in Apex Legends, especially as you get higher in the ranks. Even just getting big damage on an opponent is pretty important, and again, you need to swoop in fast and efficiently to finish a team. Likewise, on the other side of things, over-peaking and taking big damage can be a huge letdown to your team. I often find my random teammates will take huge damage, and before you know it, we are getting patted on by a 3-stack team because they absolutely know what they're doing and they are capitalizing on their fight. So don't let enemies get up and do not take too much damage from peaking. We have briefly mentioned this, but let's now just talk about surviving in Apex Legends. In Apex specifically, healing is wildly important. Quick 25 shield cell heals mid-fight aren't uncommon, and if you aren't shooting, running, or making making a play in a fight, you absolutely need to be healing up constantly. Because Apex has a very high time to kill, this makes shields and other healing items way more valuable because it is even more ammo and magazine rounds an enemy needs to expend to get you down. Armor swapping is wildly huge. It's one of the most important mechanics that you can learn in this game. In mere seconds for players, they can go from no shields to full shields, doubling or better their health. This tactic is simple, just by dropping your empty armor for a full armor, and in my opinion, there is no better technique in the game for extending your life in engagements. Again, always be armor swapping. This could mean dropping your red evo for a white evo that is full. This could mean dropping your red evo for another red evo, for a red for a gold. It doesn't matter. Any health is extra health, means more bullets for them to take you down. I just want to take a second and say, if you want to hang out or if you have any questions, come by Twitch where I do stream quite often, and I would love to chat with you. Also, hit that like button if you do enjoy the video, or if you just want to support me. I absolutely appreciate it. Thank you so much. Third-party legends. It's what some like to call Apex Legends because honestly, sometimes the game feels like a never-ending third-party fight where you just can't make anything work due to some random squad coming in and knocking you after a few shots because you just finished a fight. So is there a way to prevent third-partying? The answer to this is complicated. If you are unaware, third-partying is basically the term where if two teams are fighting, a third team comes in to clean up both of those teams or clean up the winning team. While it is infuriating, annoying, frustrating, it's wildly important, and it's something that everyone needs to be aware of. This goes back to capitalizing on opportunities and not overextending engagements to the point where you do become a third party. The best way to stop a third party is to finish your fight as fast as possible. When you are making a move, the longer that engagement goes, the more time it allows for players to rotate in and make you a target. So if you take a fight, finish it, and finish it quick. This rolls us directly into movement in Apex Legends. Apex Legends movement is plentiful and it's absurdly complicated compared to Warzone's slide canceling. Obviously, it is not as complex as Fortnite's building, but Apex Legends has its own level of movement complexity, and I would even say that it has an extreme skill gap that most don't even understand when they are starting to play the game for the first time. I have a movement guide if you want some tips on basics to more advanced movement, but in general, I just want to mention a few basic things to keep in your mind. First, always put your gun away when you are moving, even if it's just for a moment in a fight to close a gap. Mere fractions of a second matter, and great positioning is rewarded. Second to this, slide jumping is the most bread and butter movement technique to help you gain an easy momentum boost. There's a few other techniques I want to encourage you to learn, and this is going to be wall jumping for ninja-like entries into a fight and evasive maneuvering, side peeking to minimize damage intake and maximize damage output, corner climbing, edge sliding, and bunny hopping. If you are feeling really aggressive, take a look at tap strafing, super gliding, zipline bouncing. All of these are really great techniques, but a little bit more advanced. Movement in Apex feels great, and once you learn some of these techniques, it will massively help you survive in your games. And honestly, movement in Apex is just a blast to do, and when you're pulling off crazy plays in fight, you're gonna feel like an absolute warlord. Next, we have the previously mentioned positioning, and this will briefly tap us into winning and losing fights in Apex Legends. First, positioning is crucial. High ground is key. Long time to kill means enemies really can't just one-mag you if you are positioned in an optimal spot, and this makes them pushing you much harder. This is even more true if they aren't a movement legend. I also just want to talk about the general ring locations. The more you play, the more you'll absolutely learn about general ring rotation patterns and even specific ending zones, so be mindful of your ring spots as you can learn from them. Finally, and this is more for ranked players, there is a such thing in Apex as a no-win position. An example could be 4 teams are left. One team has a god spot, crazy high ground, great angles, a lot of weaponry. They're just unloading on the entire lobby that's left because no one can get to them. And unless they do something dumb, they are going to win the game. Then this could mean you and the other 3 teams are fighting for that second place, and this is okay. The earlier you realize this, the better you will be. What you need to do here, accept your poor positioning and notice that you are in a spot of weakness. Maybe instead, capitalize on this position by waiting for the other 2 teams to fight and then take second, or just ape a team and take your second or third placement with a bonus couple of kills. What is important in Apex is just consistency and making the most out of your games. Not every game is going to be winnable, and this actually can be determined very early on based on where the ring goes. Let's talk about loot and in general inventory management, plus what other things you should be on the lookout in your early game. If you're hot dropping with other players, no matter the armor color on the ground, blue, purple, doesn't matter. As always, take the weapon first. Purple armor means nothing if you don't have a weapon and the other player grabs the R99, empties that mag into you, and then you're knocked on the ground. Second to this, don't take too many healing items. Shields are way more important, and it's always what you're going to be getting tapped into first. I prefer no more than 4 syringes and 2 medkits unless I know I'm going to have to take a little bit of ring damage. Third, and we will talk about this more shortly, grenades are mega important. Try to always carry at least one. I find new players kind of sleep on these and they are forgotten about. Finally, don't loot forever, especially in early game. If you get a good gun right off spawn with a blue armor or even a better armor or even no armor, but you do find a good weapon, go find an enemy player because this is how you will improve. If you have a great weapon right away, this means at worst, they probably have a great gun too, but at the best, you're going to have an advantage because you have some good weaponry and they might be underlooted. Don't be afraid to run over there early game, try to get a couple kills. This will help you learn gun skill, this will help you learn positioning, this will help you learn movement. Looting will not help you learn any of that. And finally, let's discuss grenades. In something like Warzone, grenades are pretty poor comparatively, I would say. For me, they were always vehicle items, like I would throw a Semtex or a C4 onto a vehicle, or I would take a throwing knife to finish off a knocked enemy. However, in Apex Legends, grenades are massive playmakers, and we have 3 types for a reason. You do not need to always load up on them, but I would highly encourage you to at least carry 1. Here's some basic tips to know about the 3 grenades. Frag grenades deal up to 100 damage, but they also cause enemies to actually displace from their location if they are hit close to the frag. Remember this if someone is camping behind something. Second, arc stars will always remove enemy shields, and they are absurdly good at opening fights. And finally, I find thermites to be a little bit more resourceful. For one, you can burn down doors, funnel enemies in hallways and that type of thing. Likewise, you can prevent their pushes. You can also burn and finish off knocked enemies. Also, the longer an enemy stays in the thermite, the more the damage stacks, and if they don't get out of it right away, they will take massive damage, and this is fairly unexpected from newer players. Plus, they will take burning damage slightly after leaving, and this means you can track them for a brief moment. Grenades are just so good. Absolutely just do not sleep on them. Let us do one last bonus tip, but I do have something that is absolutely worth mentioning. But before this, if you want slightly more in-depth tips and analysis, we just launched a 24 Apex Legends tips and tricks to become an Apex Warlord for Season 10, and we go over a ton of game mechanics and systems in that video. So this tip is going to have all to do with weapon skins. Some weapon skins actually have better iron sights, and this is absolutely something you should take note of. Here's a few of the important skins to monitor for a few of the weapons. The first I want to recommend is going to be the alternator. You're going to have the LED res and the galvanizer. Both of these are really great, really clean iron sights. For the R99, I want to recommend something like the Outlands Avalanche. This has a tube going down the side, and any of these tube ones have great iron sights. They're straight vertical instead of having a little round thing at the end. For shotguns, I will say if you take a look at the Peacekeeper, something like the Superstar, this has a very thin profile when you're looking down the barrel, which does make this very satisfying to use because it is very thin. And finally, the pistols, I'm just going to say the Wingman has a lot of great skins. The default skin on the Wingman is actually pretty bad, but if you look at something like the Merciless Wing, this has a very thin profile, and I find that this skin helps me aim a lot because I can see a lot more around the gun. All in all, though, the skins of the guns aren't really too much pay to win, but those are a few that you can pick up right now if you do want some easier iron sights. I do know games like Warzone come out with guns in the packs where you can buy them and they have better iron sights. Luckily in this game, you can't just get these with crafting materials, and you will get some crafting materials as you are just leveling up opening packs that you do get from leveling up. All in all, there you go. There's 10 tips plus a bonus tips. Of course, these tips are not all inclusive and are just some of the basics of Apex Legends, really just to get you going into your game. Be sure to drop a comment down below if you have any questions. If you need someone to play with, hop into our Discord. We got a lot of people in there. There's always someone looking to play. And as always, I hope to see you live in the Twitch streams. Peace out.